being late, late this morning. Believe it or not, I cut myself shaving, and it simply would not stop bleeding. And that's the reason I wasn't here. I wish I had a better story, but that's basically it. I don't want to cover a lot of ground that's already been covered, but I did have an opening statement talking about, I mean, obviously, the number one issue that we're facing out of both of your regions is the migration challenge coming up out of Latin America. How that's certainly pressuring our border, but it is also putting a lot of pressure on nations throughout your AOR. I know Colombia, Panama, Chile, amongst others, are facing that challenge, and just the overall instability, and of course now instability coming out of Haiti as well. I think it's crucially important that we try to figure out some way to work with these countries to increase stability. We can talk about the border and what should we do to secure it, what laws should we pass, but at the end of the day, as long as there are millions of people desperate to get out of where they're at and come here, there's no 100% fix to the problem in that situation. There just isn't. So getting greater stability in that region, understanding also that many of the migrants come from outside of your region, get into Latin America and work their way up is the number one thing. And also I think Mr. Alford's point about China, I think the answer to the question of what is their end game, China wants more influence in the world. And very specifically, they want more influence than us. They want to build partnerships and relationships wherever they can to undermine our ability to have influence in the world and put themselves in a better and stronger position. And we can see what that means, that it would put them in a better position to bully their way into, gosh, a half dozen countries where they claim territory, the Philippines, Indonesia, India, ironically, even Russia. So that's really what we're fighting for is influence in the world, and what they want to do. And I think it's really important that we build our relationships in Latin America to try and prevent that. And then on the North American side, again, I agree with Mr. Alford, trying to protect our airspace. Certainly, we've learned of some vulnerabilities in the last couple of years. I know, General Guillot, you have addressed those, and I appreciate that. But those are the broad concerns. One question I would have is, you mentioned the potential that exists in Latin America. I'd like both General Richardson and Ms. Zimmerman to address what can we be doing, what partners can we be working with to better realize that potential and reduce the chaos, reduce the drive that is pushing so many people out of so many countries and forcing this migration. Ms. Zimmerman, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Thank you so much, Congressman, for that question. I think you speak to an important set of things, which is not simply what can we do to respond on America's worst day if we find ourselves in conflict with China, but how can we actually build the relationships now? Because that speaks to the values that we share as democracies. And the department, in conjunction with other departments and agencies across the U.S. government, is really working to reinforce those democratic values, is working to build strong defense partnerships. So, for example, the Secretary just attended the North American Defense Ministerial, which is a trilateral conversation involving Canada and Mexico. We have the Conference of Defense Ministers of the Americas, which will be coming up later this year. So to ensure that the department represents those values in those forums. But I think there's also work that we do in building partner capacity, and I'll let General Richardson speak to that. But I would also second what General Richardson said earlier, which is that some of the development finance corporation efforts, our other economic efforts, where we can nest those, where we can nest our activities in those common efforts, I think we can realize a lot of gains that would otherwise, working in silos in the government, not be possible.
Thank you, General.
So, Congressman, thank you for that, and thank you for the question. Certainly, the funding that I received last year and the 8068 funding, additional funding on top of what I received, really helped, and it had flexible authorities to help us be responsive to our partner nations. And as you know, and as I've testified before, and working with the DoD team, but also Department of State and the interagency to speed up our processes in foreign military sales, excess defense articles, and not take years to deliver a capability, because our partner nations these heads of state are in the seat generally one term of 4 years, and they're working on a stopwatch, not a calendar. They need results within months, not years. And so that's what has led me to also partner with Department of Commerce, Department of Treasury, the American Chamber of Commerce, because our economic security is really, really important here. So when you're talking about the realization of feeding and the fuel in the world, when half the soybean for the globe comes from this region, 30% of the corn and the sugar comes from this region for the globe. You've got the Amazon, you've got 31% of the world's fresh water, you've got light sweet crude, heavy crude, you've got gold, copper, rare earth elements, the lithium triangle. 60% of the world's lithium is in this region. The potential is there, so how do we help with the economic investment? We have a lot of foreign direct investment from the United States already, but our U.S. companies in the region, we need to brand and start bragging about what Team USA does for the countries already. And then we have to help streamline how our companies, and if there are barriers to competing on the tenders for critical infrastructure in South America, Central America, and the Caribbean. And that is part of that partnership that we've been doing. National security rests on economic security.
Yeah. And just one comment, one final question. I think the security piece of this is crucial, and I know it's something that Congress writ large is wrestling with right now. You know, we have concerns when we sell arms or security equipment to other nations. What do they do with them? And those concerns are legitimate. But I hope everyone understands that every nation tries to figure out some way to provide for their own security, okay? There is no nation out there that just simply lays down their arms and hopes for the best, okay? They try to maintain security, and that's never easy, and it's always a very difficult balance. A partnership with these other countries, part of it is helping them provide that security. And our slow walking of arms sales is undermining our relationships throughout the world and opening the door wide for China and Russia. It is not like these nations are not going to get weapons if we stop selling them to them. They're just going to build different relationships. We've certainly seen that in the Middle East, and I hope we're mindful of the trade-off. Final question is our relationships in Latin America. You know, one of the big things, Russia and China have an incredibly aggressive messaging machine. They are out there 24/7 denigrating us, basically. It's a massive worldwide negative campaign that people here domestically pick up for a variety of different reasons. And one of the things they play off of is historical concerns about what the U.S. has done in a bunch of places, but particularly in Latin America. So when you're working with Brazil and Argentina and Chile, how do you push back against that negative campaign? Because it does seem to be having an effect. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that point, but I think it has hurt our relationships with a number of countries in Latin America, the battle with Cuba, the battle with Nicaragua, what's going on with Venezuela. How can we better burnish our own image so that we can have a better chance at building the partnerships we need to build?
Well, I would say, Congressman, thank you for that question, because we've got to be trusted partners, and we have the American Partnership for Economic Prosperity, APEP, which is a program from the Summit of the Americas. And APEP hosted at the White House in early November 11 Latin American heads of state that came. And for a week, they discussed the challenges in the region, but then also rolled out the programs of economic help in terms of in modern ports, clean energy, and digital technology. And billions of dollars of programs and efforts of infusement of economic investment into the region through the Inter-American Development Bank and also through Developmental Finance Corporation. And so with that, there are some shares, 75 million in shares that are coming up for vote this month, that I would recommend that as we had this APEP in November and hosted these leaders at the White House, that we have got to recommend that we purchase those shares from the United States so we don't give our adversaries an opportunity to purchase them as part of the investment that we rolled out in the November timeframe.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Virginia, Ms. Kiggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for our guests for being with us today. Just a comment about the security potential that we have in Central and South America, and I think just prioritizing our funding so that we can put our money where our mouth is. The defense budget is always inadequate, and just making sure that we are, again, prioritizing that funding because it is so important.